to another week in advance. How you doing tonight, Christopher?
Really fantastic. I assume things in Los Angeles are pretty mellow.
Things are mellow. The energy is coming to pass, I feel. Well, it's been a lot of Pisces, this week coming into this week, with Chiron getting ready to go retrograde here and that ocean of water I like to call of Pisces, confusing the Gemini a little bit. We've had some Pisces Gemini squares, and it's exciting. I think it really shows you how the universe can turn and be part of a ever-changing process.
Oh, exactly. One of the things that's kind of fun watching is this Neptune-Chiron interaction going on with Saturn over there in good old Scorpio. Saturn likes to dig around and bring things up from the depths. I always think of Robert Palmer with his live tour when he would be out there doing digging in the dirt, and that really is the interaction. I think right now Chiron Neptune in square to or in trine to Saturn in Scorpio, and then we get a little kiss going on from Jupiter in Cancer. So by water sign we have a grand trine going on, which could bring some interesting things up to be finally reviewed and released.
Yeah, a lot of this energy has been very internal. A lot of people forced to deal with inner stuff, inner world stuff, working on your own thought processes as well, and how it computes everything. And I said in one of my horoscopes this week, it's not that the calculator is broken, it's that the information coming in to calculate has a lot of dust on it, or it's got, and it's like you got to get down to the numbers right now in your life. And there's a lot of things to compute, and there's almost an abundance of things to compute, and it's an intense time of our inner worlds really going through a lot, and the outer world kind of like pausing by, waiting for people to manifest once they get back and clicked into gear. It almost feels like.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what we're going to see happen as soon as Mercury does, in fact, go direct. It's going to just carry this huge surge of restrained or pent-up energy because, we've had a lot of backwards motion. Finally, Mars is moving forward now, but for a long time, Mars is really bogging us down, and we've got Saturn still retrograde. We've got Pluto retrograde, and we've got, Jupiter advancing dramatically here to get the hell away from both those square interactions and oppositional interactions, and of course it's going to be leaping into Leo before too much longer. So I think it's going to be a good break loose cycle that we're moving up on here.
Yeah, typical Sagittarius fashion. When the going gets tough and the positivity starts to end, out of here. Jupiter's like so funny to watch in a chart. Literally, that cardinal cross, he's the only one that said, "I'm out of here." And the positivity is trying to come back online. The optimism. Jupiter's pretty much his coattails are out of that big process, and here it is in Cancer, and this is our final month. I mean, we're less than a month away of Jupiter in Cancer, and there's been, I think, a lot of feelings to look at, but at the same time, I think there's been so much stress in Cancer that it's almost like we still don't maybe understand our feelings exactly. There's still a lot of processing, computing, a lot of emotions to go through, and I think what we're going to spend this week doing is figure that out. We're going to have the sun finally come back into Cancer here. It's been, a year since the last sun in Cancer, and we've got Jupiter here. So this is going to get to the bottom of feelings. This is going to look at the root of our life. Are we rooting our energy in the right space? And this Gemini transit, I think, tried to answer a lot of questions, but it did have a Mercury retrograde in the middle of it. So I don't think until Mercury's done going retrograde are the questions going to be answered. But maybe we can start to confront these feelings,
Yeah, it does feel like a grand procession sort of energy building this week because, as you had mentioned, we've got the sun getting ready to flip over into Cancer. We're going to have Venus flip over into Gemini, which is going to bring us kind of an interesting and somewhat erratic, I think, adjustment period because Venus really does like that Taurean energy, and now it's going to all of a sudden pick up that electricity that you find in Gemini. And then we've got the longest day of the year coming up on Saturday. So, you know, this is when we're able to really sense that change, because from the winter solstice all the way up to the summer solstice, we have this brilliant white light. And for artists and painters and photographers, you really feel that edge of that kind of light coming directly at us here from the sun's position in relationship to the angle of the planet. But now we're going to see it start to grow over into that yellowish range, and we'll notice the shadows are turning more of a brownish tone rather than that bluish purple tone that we're used to seeing after, you know, for the last 6 months. So the days will begin to get shorter, and you'll feel that that warmth, that yellowish kind of tone that we also associate with summer and then harvest.
Yeah, this is going to be the longest day or the shortest day for all those Australians out there and southern folks. And this is the opposite of equinoxes. Equal is equal day, equal night. So this is the Earth kind of reaching its peak point, and or what are the sun's view of, you know, how the sun relates with Earth, you know. But this is a different energy, you know. This is where things are really opposed in a different kind of vibe, you know, and it's peaking. That we're having to look at now our feelings very intensely now. Whether you're on the other side of the earth or here, it's all about, well, how are you feeling about things, you know? As this is the crab as he goes. The reason why Cancer is the sign Cancer is because the sun crabs his way sideways now. You know, the sun can't keep rising in view up. Now he goes sideways into Leo. Like literally the sun just kind of travels at this weird angle and then comes back down. So I think this is a very kind of intense time for us to really kind of look at things. This is where we kind of plateau for a moment in Earth. And I think this plateau is to see, you know, how do we feel? What's the deal happening in our life? Where is everything going? This has been Mars very, very intense. This has been a very weird year. You know, Mars retrograde, Venus retrograde, Jupiter, a big cardinal cross. There's a lot shifting in our lives. Extreme change is what it's about. And I think that this week, as Mars is about to get ready to come into an opposition with Uranus, it's time to look at the other alternatives, different alternatives, exciting new things coming into our life. I got a feeling this week is going to drop some really exciting things. And this is also Venus as well, finishing up in Taurus and getting ready to come into Gemini, which I think is, you know, I think Venus in Taurus has laid a lot of foundations in our soul and maybe what we want to manifest. But I think that there's been a lot to still figure out before things really take off. So this has been a very unique transit in our lives, as everything's been up in the air. Everything can change at a moment's notice. And I think we'll continue to see that this week. Unfortunately, for those people who are wanting stability, it's just not fully there yet. It's not ready for that, you know?
Yeah, it's going to eventually arrive there, and I think we'll see the beginnings of our sense of how things are going to stabilize, how they're going to gel as we move through this week. But it's kind of fun looking at the way the weekend launches, because on Friday we have the moon in Aries coming along and getting intimate with good old Uranus in Aries, and so that's all kind of an exotic blend that creates an ersatz kind of energy. And to add an extra edge to it, it's going to be in opposition to Mars. So that sets off the fireworks. That's like lighting the first, you know, those first cones that go off with the sparklers. And I think the weekend is going to be very electric because we'll all be feeling that, you know, expanded sun cycle as the sun is really beaming out this, hey, I'm at the peak. You know, I'm at the high point here. So a very interesting weekend. It's a weekend that is kind of rife with a lot of different possibilities. You know, if you're working on collecting yourself together, getting a clear focus of where you should be going, you'll accomplish a lot over the weekend. If you're scattered and disengaged, this could be a weekend when you could, get your ass thrown in jail. So it is kind of edgy energy, but it's also very exciting and tantalizing energy.
Yeah, that moon in Aries makes it a very powerful, dynamic kind of weekend. On top of all that, Chiron goes retrograde, which Chiron retrograde in Pisces, very unique, weird energy to go through. I mean, Pisces is already such a very hard to understand sign as it's so vast. And Chiron is a sign that, or a planet, or it's not even a planet, that's the whole funny part about it. It almost became a planet. It's always been associated with wounded aspects. But Chiron, I think, also is about development. Are you able to develop fully into a healthy aspect of your life? And I think that we're looking at this vast space of spirituality, this vast space of our unconsciousness. Retrograding of this Chiron here is really about this vast energy of whether or not we can fully develop ourselves in understanding our conscious parts of ourselves, shed parts of our unconscious behaviors. And with this big transition happening in feelings, identity, ego, I think you're right to be careful. Just because finally maybe we get a little break here with this kind of, whether it's wounded energy in this vast, weird space of Pisces, I think it's important to not let your unconscious behaviors just start to jump out like, hey, we're out of rehab, so throw the needle in my arm.
Yes, well, and I do know a couple of people who are problemed with that exact conundrum, but
I know
nonetheless,
it's very serious. I like to make jokes, and I take it very seriously. I'm dealing with this personally in my life with some people actually too, but I think, I'm not afraid to bring the truth out, and that's kind of the truth. So not saying people out there are drug addicts, but there's parts of our unconscious behaviors that might just want to jump out.
Exactly. And this is the kind of energy that will compel people to do that. And then as we come out of the weekend, we're going to see the moon moving solidly into Taurus. And Monday, Tuesday, it's going to be in opposition to Saturn. So that kind of is the bitter dregs of the wine bottle. After a raucous weekend, a Moon-Saturn opposition will probably illuminate people in the sense of what the hell was I thinking when I did that? So it is going to be a very classic party weekend, and I think the people who are good at being able to restrain themselves or to assess a situation and say, hey, I don't need that, they're the ones who are going to come out of the weekend really feeling very empowered, because when you tell yourself, this is extravagant, this is indulgent, you're giving your ego a little bit of boundary lines, and you're forming your ego in a more positive direction. So I think the weekend does have the potential for some very powerful epiphanies for people, and the ones who are working with the energy are going to step out of it feeling like, yeah, hey, I handled that, I'm on my way up.
Yeah, you want to be on your way up, especially as Uranus is opposing Mars. You don't want to be on the bad side of this transit, because it could be the hammer hitting your finger, which that never feels good. I don't know any time I've ever hammered and missed and hit my finger that it felt good. This is the big stub toe. This is the stitches. This is, you want to be, I think, really watching your actions and staying in a balanced place. I think that's what Mars is teaching everybody in Libra is, if you're going to indulge, well, indulge just enough. My father always used to say, what was the line? But, like moderation, like everything in moderation, my son. I'm like, okay, like there's a moderation point in our lives right now. This isn't extreme. Go for it all the way. Although Saturn in Scorpio is wanting us to find those things to go for, it's not letting everybody get that extreme energy. Saturn is teaching the art of it through almost denying access. And I think it's important for people to realize that we just can't overindulge. We've got to find moderation. And Venus shifts into Gemini on Monday, which will really spice things up. And I think that will really, especially in relationships, there's a lot of relationship stuff I think we're about to see, especially as Mars enters this really powerful zone in Libra. It's getting closer to its shadow point. Also, it's getting closer to the North Node in Libra. And here we have Venus switching into fun, exciting, communicative, changeable Gemini. And we've got a Sun in Cancer, which a lot of relationships form in Cancer. There's something warm about coming together in Cancer. It's summer love that starts to hit, or winter love for all you people down there. So I feel, and maybe this is my scribing, but I'm feeling crazy relationships coming together this week very intensely, especially as Mars opposes Uranus. Anything can happen.
Oh, and it will, yes. And your father was obviously a very wise man. My old standard has always been everything in moderation, including moderation. So every once in a while you do have to get really crazy in order to have that sense of fulfillment at the end of the day. But yeah, getting back to that idea of Venus in Gemini, one of the things I like when I have in past years observed this process of Venus moving through the sign of Gemini, I find that the arts, especially theater and movies and things like that, that there are sparks when we see Venus moving through Gemini, because Gemini is a great communicator and Venus is very artistic, very creative. So I think that this is going to be a real acceleration for that creative muse that people have. And if you're an aficionado of the arts, this is going to be a prime time this next week, the next 2 or 3 weeks actually, to get out and check out theater, to check out contemporary dance, check out an opera if you're into opera. But I think performance is going to be tremendously enhanced as Venus makes that passage through Gemini.
Yeah, it is. And then it's going to come into some squares with all the Neptune energy, which there'll be some things to look at with unconsciousness, confusion, figuring things out. There's definitely going to be a lot happening in this space and a lot to process, a lot to figure out. But it'll be magical. It'll be different. It'll be out of this world. I think it'll be exciting, dynamic, powerful, but still learning that, and it might be frustrating that there'll still be some sort of moderation that's lingering around it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Which could upset people, you know?
Right. Well, and you know that that description that you were bringing to mind there of the Venus-Neptune square, my immediate thought was Cloud Atlas. If you've read the book or seen the movie, that is a perfect example because you have that deep undercurrent of spirituality, multiple incarnations with, you know, the same characters playing different roles in different lifetimes. And so we are challenged to see into the depths of our past and our future and recognize that we're connected to stories, and that's really all our lives amount to. They're just stories that we are creating for the benefit of each other. And once we're able to identify that aspect of the life journey, then it makes it much easier to step out of being a victim of your story and begin to realize, oh, I scripted this. There must be a reason for this. And that, again, is what we're doing here, is challenging people to go into themselves, to look deeply within the stories that they're currently participating in their lives, and perhaps find a higher plateau to view these stories from. So it's all about, again, the high point of the sun, getting to that higher place in the stratosphere where you can actually see the bigger picture of what's going on.
That was a very beautiful description there. I love that description. That was nice. And I want to bring up the dark moon. Wednesday, Thursday, the moon's in Gemini. It's going to hump over Venus. It's going to make squares to all this energy that we've been talking about and this kind of confusion. Wednesday, Thursday can be a little off, especially as we're now in a new sun in Cancer and we're trying to understand our feelings, and now the questions pop up. And the stimulation kind of pulls us in lots of directions. And it'll be a dark moon in Gemini because Friday is the new moon in Cancer pretty early. So we're on a build-up this whole week of a new moon process and an ending of a moon. So this is definitely a weird week, but it's and anything can happen. I mean, this is going to be Mars opposing Uranus exactly in the middle of the dark moon and the new moon beginning. So this is going to be a dynamic Cancer month that starts once the new moon hits next Friday, and of course we'll talk about this next week, but having a Mars opposing Uranus for that month cycle, that means the universe is about to bring some stories that are really, that we didn't even probably predict correctly. You know, like we can't even really see through the looking glass that great right now because there's too much all over the place that's opening up right now, and so many weird directions, and this is going to be exciting. But I think this week's going to be exciting as well. Just there's still a sense of where's it all going at the end of it still.
Exactly, and as you had mentioned, as the moon advances into its final phase of diminishing, we're going to be observing that happen in the sign of Gemini. So we will see a lot of communication go through the process of disintegration and just fizzle out. And so if you're doing anything that requires signing contracts, making commitments, launching new enterprises, you're probably better off to wait until after next Friday. Give it a little bit of time for that renewal. But essentially, yeah, we're going to see a lot of stuff go through that final phase. And, you know, again,
wait until July. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
I think people, yeah. I think after this retrograde is going to be important.
I think it absolutely is, and I think that that's the Phoenix arising, is when Jupiter makes that entrance, when the Sun is making that entrance. You know, we're going to see the Phoenix reinvent itself and arise from its own ashes, and we are the Phoenix, so it's up to us to embrace that image, to embrace that ideal. So yeah, we've got some pretty powerful components playing out this week, but it is definitely a period here where we still have to be patient. We have to be willing to give allowance for these the unfinished stories to play themselves out.
Yeah, and one little, I don't want to say warning, but that frustration of Mars opposing Uranus, people's anger could come out of nowhere. It's still being pressured by a Pluto square. So, you know, watch that action. Moderation's key. Moderation's key. And Mars in Libra just, you know, it's not a dynamic placement. It's a much more precise and weigh it out. Take your time.
Exactly.
Placement. It's made for Mai Tais on the beach. That's what I always tell people. So if you have a hard time with vacation energy, this isn't, you know, it takes a while.
That's very true. And on the other side of that, if you flip somebody off on the freeway, they may be chasing your ass down with a gun. So, you know, there's definitely that edge about that Mars opposition to Uranus.
Yeah, let's see what the cards say.
I was just thinking that myself, and wow. Boy, the cards are being quite literal as we enter into this weekend. The first card up for this Friday, Saturday initiation and the solstice, we have the good old Ace of Swords. And, you know, this is a very powerful image. The sword is representative of the mind and the intellect. And this is telling us that we have to be very discerning, very alert. And be willing to, you know, use the sword to cut yourself free from environments and situations that could become hostile or somewhat combative. The next card up, as we move deeper into the weekend, this is a really nice card. And my lighting tonight is a little bit off. But anyway, this is a Page of Cups. So over the weekend, we're going to have kind of a nice emotional roll going on. We're going to be feeling, you know, that energy of wanting communion, wanting to interact with people. And once again, the real challenge is to not let yourself get out of control and follow this emotional surge. especially because as we move into Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we have the Justice card. The scales are going to balance out. And this again has a very airy sign. So far we're seeing a lot of emphasis on air and a lot of emphasis on water. And those two elements are definitely going to be major themes throughout the weekend. As we move into midweek, a lot of people are going to feel like there was some kind of significant rite of passage that by Wednesday, Thursday, they're going to recognize with the Ten of Swords that a phase of their life has finally come full circle. And again, I would associate this with that idea of the moon diminishing in Gemini and advancing toward renewal in Cancer. So Ten of Swords is a very powerful image because, like the Death card, the implication is that there's a new beginning, a new dawn on the horizon. And then the final card, look at that, Cancer, 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 the Chariot. This is one of my favorite cards in the major arcana, and it's it really, you know, if you can look closely, you'll notice one horse or one unicorn is white, the other is black. So we've got the that whole idea of duality, and one of them is trying to pull to the left, the other is pulling to the right, and that's causing the charioteer to really work out issues of resolving inner duality. And at the same time, the charioteer is playing a lyre. So he's taking life rather nonchalantly and saying, hey, I can balance all these elements. I can advance with change. I can advance with opportunity. And of course, we will be advancing in that sign of Cancer, which you had highlighted as being about relationships. It's also about home and family and possessions, acquisitions. So it looks like a very rich week. It's going to be a week that has challenges, but overall, it's going to be a lot of fun for people who can just relax and move with it.
And you know, all the cards were really well done. I think they go well with the astrology, like you said. I actually did some research on the helio astrology, which is, you know, the astrology of the sun and looking at the sun at the center of the chart. And Venus and Uranus will conjunct this whole week in Aries and square Pluto and Capricorn, and it's going to be an exact dead square. So Venus and Uranus will be exact all week, which is going to be dynamic, weird, and unique relationship stuff. But there's going to be some intense change, some intense commitment. It's going to be very stimulated. The helio is showing a lot of crazy and powerful energy through this week of our inner world. I've always looked at helio as like a way of looking at our deep soul and where the evolution of everybody's souls are going. And I'm glad I looked because the cards also said there's so much there. It's an intense dynamic week. There'll be some shedding too, and there'll be this kind of spiritual new road that the chariot pulls us on by the end of this week. And it's related all over the place today.
Exactly. And as you had mentioned, the heliocentric astrology, when we think of the sun, what is the sun symbolic of? It's our life force. It's, you know, the essence within us that is expressing and coming out. So yeah, you have to factor in heliocentric movement because it does give you a real clear definition as to what, you know, the urges of the life force that you're expressing is trying to bring into manifestation.
Yes, it is. So this has been a really, really great look at what's coming up. And we all know that July is going to shift things, like you said, the Phoenix rising. But this is one of those weeks of there's things happening and it's exciting, but patience will still be part of the key.
Oh, exactly. Yes, and don't go away angry. You know, I mean, because things will flip again. So if you're feeling frustrated right now, by the time we hit that renewal, and we'll be taking, you know, a more in-depth look at that next Friday, that's when you're going to see the tide finally turn.
Yes, it is. So, well, thanks so much, Christopher. It was an excellent time spending it with you and going deep into the week in advance. And Yeah, I look forward to seeing you next week.
It's going to be awesome. Have a fantastic week.
All right, take care.
You too.